Do we want to pass these down to Chade, or is he getting them? Down and around.
Chad.
Thank you very much. Wow. Serious.
That last picture, that was
kind of freaky, huh?
yeah, it's like The Exorcist. What was?
I don't know. I'm going to give it to you. It's a token of my...
really?
Can you work towards that? Isn't that weird? Yeah, you can pass it around. That was kind of weird.
So we all have some experience with cars, in some capacity. I think just about everyone in this room has had something to do with cars, whether we all have licenses or know how to drive or whatever. So I thought that'd be a great topic for today. Everyone's can relate, and we'll probably have some exciting stories coming up, I hope. Just a couple thoughts about cars. A guy walks into a store and says, "Hey, I want a new gas cap for my Kia." The store owner says, "Sounds like a fair trade."
That's great.
If you took every car in America and lined them up end to end, it'd be like Labor Day. Traffic.
Got it.
All right.
That's like from Phoenix to LA. That's what it is.
Have you ever noticed that people who are going faster than you are maniacs, and people who are going slower than you are idiots? George Carlin. You must be going perfect speed all the time, right? Because everyone else, what are they doing? So, just to jump right in at the beginning, tell us a story about how it was for you to learn how to drive. Who's got a story? Any interesting, exciting learning to drive? Crickets. Speaking of crickets. Nobody. Oh, wow. It's got to be some kind of record. All right, let's move right along. Good job, team. Hey, being pulled over. Does anyone have a great story about being pulled over?
Talking yourself out of a ticket, anybody?
Yeah, right? Anybody with any car stories in general? All right, look at that. All right.
Stories in general.
Just talk up here all day, you know?
I'll actually talk about the first question of learning how to drive.
Great.
I have a really interesting story. Growing up, my dad, anytime you talk to someone on the phone, like a telemarketer, just someone to leave a message for, he'd always ask, "Did you get the person's name?" And I'd always say, "No, I didn't," and I would get yelled at. So when it was time for me to take driver's ed, I signed up for classes, and then something happened where I got invited to go. It was so long ago. High school football game or somewhere, so I couldn't take my driver's ed class on that Friday, and the guy was going to pick me up at my high school at 3:45 or whenever sports were done. So I called the school and said, I need to reschedule my session. I can't go. And the woman I talked to said, "Yeah, no problem. I'll let the guy know that you're not attending." So I said, "Good." And right before I got off the phone, I said, "But what is your name again?" So I wanted to obviate any problems in case
there it is.
Came up. And she said, "My name's Kristen." So I wrote it down. I come home from school and I'm getting ready for whatever I was going to after my mind. I can't remember anything right now anyway from wedding planning. So my memory shot. I'm getting ready and there's a knock on the door, so I go and answer it. And this guy goes, "Are you Tracy?" And I say, "Yeah." And he says, "You missed your driver's ed appointment." And I said, "No, I called and I canceled." He's like, "No, you didn't." And I was like, "Yeah, I called on Monday and I canceled 5 days in advance." And he looked at me like I was lying, and as this is going on, my dad walks up, and he's kind of listening in the background, and he goes, "Well, who did you talk to?" And I said, "I talked to Kristen." And at first I'm like, I hope that's the right name. And he's like, "Well, I don't think you did." And I was like, "Well, is there a Kristen that works there?" And he said, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Well, I talked to her on Monday." And then I hear my dad say, "If she said she got the girl's name, then she called and she canceled, so you can go ahead and leave." So then the guy had to walk away, and then my dad said, "Let's go to another school." So I went somewhere else for a driver's ed. Great, thank you.
Tracy, just to obviate any apprehension you guys have about coming up here, I'll share a real quick story about when I learned to drive. When you're going to back up, you got to put your right hand on the back of a passenger a seat and turn around. Instead of putting my hand on the back of the seat, I put it in the driver's instructor's hair. She was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So any other learning how to drive stories, or we want to just chuck that one in the garbage and move on? Any other being pulled over?
Got something back there.
We
I
have
have a learning to drive story, but I do have a story about my first car.
Let's
Okay.
do it.
All right. Who's gonna sit for timer? Cool. Hey, Amy, what's the 20?
No, this is too specific.
Are you giving $20?
The cafeteria.
Ah.
So, okay, the story is about my first car. I bought my first car when I was 16. I worked at this place called Best over Christmas. It was a toy store. I worked in the toy section over Christmas, and as you know, working in a toy store with children coming through and parents, and you know, this was like a high school job. It was the craziest job I've ever had. So I worked at this place, saved my money, and a friend of mine owned a body shop. So he said, "Oh, I can get you a used car." I said, "Great, I'll save up the money." So I saved up the money, and I gave him a down payment for the car, and a few months later I got a car. And it was February 2nd. And you know, it was a nice blue car, it's what I wanted, and you know, I was very proud to get it. Needed some tires because it was used, and you know, I was just working as a student. And I remember, you know, I had the car and I drove to school, and you know, it was great to have a car in school. And so 10 days later, it was raining, and it was coming down really hard. My mom's called me from work and she said, "You have to go pick up your cousin." And I said, "I just got home from school. Can't you just pick her up later?" She's like, "No, I want you to go pick her up now." So I drove from where we lived down to the mall and picked up my cousin, and on the way home, it was very wet, and my tires were very bald. So I hydroplaned the car into a wall right in front of the McDonald's.
Oh, no.
Totaled the front end of the car. I actually drove it home, but I mean, it was totally wrecked. Once I got it home, it never worked again. Now, the sad part of the story is, or the interesting part, however you want to frame it, I ended up working at that McDonald's, seeing the wall that I crashed into because I needed to pay off the car.
Oh, that's funny.
boy.
Yeah, that's it.
Does anybody else have a story about their first car? There we go. That's me.
So I'm not gonna lie, I kind of miss my first car. Her name was Goldilocks, and yes, she was gold. She was an '89 Ford Taurus, and yes, she was my grandmother's. And probably my favorite thing about my car, to give you some context, I got a cell phone when I was in 7th grade, and so I got my car, I think my last year of high school, and it had a car phone, like not a cell phone, a car phone that had like a twirly cord in the center seat. That this is another great feature. If you close and cover up that car phone, you have a 6th seat in the car. I can't tell you how many times I drove around with 6 people in my car, and then the transmission would usually break. I don't know if I had like a weight issue with that. So yeah, she started out as an HP fleet car actually, and then like so it must have been a pretty cool car in '89 with like a car phone and 6 seats. But all my friends they loved that car, and it worked really well for me. And it had ridiculously low mileage that I got from my grandma. Basically, just like sat in her garage the entire time she owned it. And so I actually was able to sell it for more than I bought it for from my grandma. Sold it for like $2,500. I think I bought it for $2,000. It was great, worked well, and I don't think I'll ever name a car again. So Goldie will always have a special place in my heart.
There we go. No worries.
This was our first car.
Oh, well, yeah.
My first car was named La Bamba. It was the Blue Bomb. It was an Olds, I think it was not an Olds 88, not an Olds 98. It was my mother's car, and I got it when I turned, like 2 days after I turned 16. I turned 16 on a Saturday. My mom took me down to DMV on Monday. I got my license at 2 days after my 16th birthday. She said, "Here are the keys, you now drive yourself to all the damn things you like to do after school and to school. And it was great because I had this blue bomb, La Bamba. It was a big car. You talk about 5 seats with a phone. Mine was like, you know, this 2 bench seats. I think it was a 76 or 75 Olds 88. And we drove that thing everywhere. My friends and I, we had a great time because not a lot of other people had them. We would take some joy rides. I admit there were a couple garbage cans that got knocked over on my watch, but we would go, and there's like a little off-road thing. I lived in the hills in Tarzana, and there was like Mulholland up on the top, and we would go around the barriers that say don't go here, and we'd drive up the fire roads and into the hills above where my folks lived, and we would drive around and blow dust all over and have a great time. So I always think of La Bamba, the blue bomb, and I miss it, and I see pictures once in a while, and that was my first car.
I have something, but it's not a car.
See?
Oh, by all means.
Come on down.
Hey, this is Pushpa Kamseti again. This is when I was doing my graduation, and the only vehicle that I had during that time was a normal bicycle. So my dad got us a motorbike for the first time, and I had to show off my motorbike. So I just had my first drive just around my street, and the next day I took that to college. I wanted to give a lift to my friend, so in fact I over-assumed myself as a great driver. I told 2 of my friends to sit in the back, and everybody were looking at me, and I just fell down. That was very shameful. But as the days passed by, I was perfect driver for my motorbike, so I could show off much more. That's about it.
Good.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Here
Limbo.
comes the
I started learning to drive when I was 12. No classes. The way in Mexico you learn is just get in the car and drive. Your daddy kept whatever state he is, you drive and you make it. But my first car, I got it when I was 22, 23, I guess. My first car was a Beetle, Volkswagen Beetle. You know, everybody sees those wrong Beetles. Everybody in Mexico has those ones because it's cheaper, and you can buy any replacement in any store in the corner. Everybody has those ones. So I got that one, but that one it was funny because it was a Beetle kind of customized. It was painted like kind of silver gray, kind of car of the James Bond. I don't know, have you seen those James Bond car? So I thought it was a convertible like the James Bond. The tires of the car were bigger, were not the normal cars, were kind of bigger. The car was also come down a little bit, so it was almost touching every time the floor. And the I don't know, whatever is inside the tire, it was also painted kind of shiny, very good. I have a small wheel, big one, small, so I have to drive like this. And when I park the car, you have to put some security, right? Mexico is that you have to. So what I did, something funny, I got the biggest chains I could ever got. So it was a chain, big one. So it was funny because I put two rods in my wheel, and then go to the stick shift. So if you stop by the car, you will see that all the chain is over the small wheel. I love that car. Every time I drive in, I was thinking I was driving the James Bond car. So that's it. Thank you.
All right.
Hit my ride. Beetle.
Perfect. Yeah, that's funny.
One
more.
All right. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. All right. I love that.
So I'm going to share a story of a car that really made me educated about cars. Of course, this was my first car. So back in India, I never owned a car. So when I came here as a student, I got an internship and I had to drive. So I was a broke student anyway. So I had a very low budget. I bought the cheapest car, and it was a Mitsubishi Galant. And everything possible that could break on a car broke on the car. So it started that the summer. It started. I was using AC so much that the radiator broke. So the car shop gave me a budget. Of course, I didn't afford it. I went to the old parts place and bought a radiator, which was really for the next model of the Galant. And it cooled down car very well. So it worked well in summer, but as winter came, I found out it's not heating up. So it was Cleveland, the temperature would be 25, 30, and car is running for half an hour and still I'm shivering. I'm wearing the full coat. Though the solution was, of course, to replace the radiator. But I found, being an engineer, I found a good technique. I went to the kitchen, I pulled aluminum foil and closed the window from where the air comes in, and now car stopping cooling down much, and I was getting sufficient heat. I said, that's good, it's perfect. So eventually what happened is probably the computer of the car got confused. It's sensing a lot of heat generated, but its temperature increasing, but radiator is something, and so computer broke. And again, the car shop gave me the biggest possible bill. It's probably more than what a computer would cost, what a whole car would cost. I just waited for a few weeks. I asked the guy to find a better used computer for the car, replaced. Started working best. And the final saga of the car is I drove that car to Columbus, Ohio, to pick up someone, to meet someone, and the fuel pump of the car gone down. And I said, that's it, this is time to say goodbye. And I asked the guy to tow the car to the junkyard, and I moved to the different one. But amazing experience, I still miss that car.
Thanks everybody for great table topics. I'm going to call back up Toastmaster and we're going to get started with the evaluations.
Thanks, Dan.
All right.